Dr. Elias Carter never thought his name would echo across the stars. He was a doctor, not a soldier, not a leader, not anyone who belonged in the politics of alien empires. His days were filled with simple work on Earth, checking patients, giving medicine, calming frightened children, and doing what doctors always tried to do: heal. That was his life. Ordinary, human, and safe. But the galaxy had other plans. The day began quietly. Elias was in his small clinic near the spaceport, treating a minor injury for a cargo worker. The hum of ships coming and going was familiar, almost comforting. Then the sky darkened. The air itself seemed to thrum as something massive entered, orbit above Earth. People rushed out into the streets, pointing and shouting. The clouds glowed with the heat of engines not built by human hands. An alien warship had arrived. It wasn't just large. It was colossal, stretching like a blade across the heavens. Its hull shimmered with black metal and burning red lines, as if it carried fire within. Rumors spread faster than truth. Some said it was here to conquer. Others whispered that it was here to destroy. All Elias knew was that every human heart trembled with fear. Then came the message. Every screen, every radio, every communication channel filled with a voice that was deep and commanding, like iron grinding against stone. Human, you will examine me now. There is no refusal. Elias froze. The voice had spoken his name. His name. It was impossible, absurd, terrifying. Out of billions of humans, why him? He felt his knees weaken as the weight of those words settled into his chest. The voice belonged to Commander Vare, Supreme Officer of the Zathari Dominion Fleet. He had heard of the Zathari before. Everyone had. They were a warrior race that crushed resistance wherever they went. Their empire was built on blood and fire. To the smaller civilizations, the name alone meant submission. They were the kind of beings humans prayed never to meet, and yet here she was, calling for him. Before Elias could even process the shock, the sky tore again. A shuttle, black and sharp as a fang, descended through the clouds. It landed with a hiss outside the spaceport, its engines rumbling like thunder. Soldiers in alien armor poured out first, their weapons glowing faintly with energy that could melt steel. They formed a circle, silent and menacing, as if daring anyone to move. Then she came, Commander Vare. She was taller than any human, her body wrapped in dark armor that seemed grown rather than forged. Her eyes glowed faintly, a cold silver light that cut through the air like knives. Every step she took carried the weight of command, as if the ground itself obeyed her. The crowd that had gathered fell silent, paralyzed by fear. No one dared breathe too loudly. Her gaze fell on Elias, and it felt like the world narrowed to nothing but her eyes and his heartbeat. "You are Elias Carter," she said, her voice steady, powerful, leaving no space for denial. "You are the human I require." Elias's mouth went dry. He wanted to speak, to protest, to ask why me. But the words died before they could escape. He was staring at a predator wrapped in flesh and steel, and she was staring back at him as though he were already hers. She took a step closer, towering over him. "You will examine me. You will do what others have failed to do. Refusal is not permitted." It wasn't a request. It wasn't even an order in the way humans understood orders. It was law spoken into being. Elias felt the eyes of everyone around him. Terrified workers, trembling children, his own patients. If he refused, what would happen? Would this alien warlord burn the city? Would she slaughter the innocent to prove her power? He had no weapons, no courage strong enough to resist. He had only his fear, and beyond that, his duty as a doctor. So, with shaking hands and a heart pounding like a drum, he whispered, "I understand." The faintest curve of her lips appeared, though it was not kindness. It was satisfaction, the smile of a commander who knew she had won without battle. "Good," she said, turning to her soldiers. "Bring him." And just like that, Elias Carter, an ordinary human doctor, was taken into the hands of a galactic warlord. He had no idea what awaited him beyond the walls of that alien ship. But he knew one thing with painful clarity. His life would never be the same again. The shuttle door sealed behind him with a heavy clang, and Elias felt the air shift. It was colder here, sharper, carrying a faint metallic taste that made his tongue sting. The alien soldiers guided him forward, their glowing weapons close enough to remind him that one wrong move meant death. Elias's heart pounded in his ears as he tried to keep his steps steady. He wanted to speak, to ask questions, but no one gave him the chance. The ship was alive with strange lights and pulsing walls, as though it breathed around him. Each corridor was filled with sounds he did not understand. Low hums, clicking rhythms, whispers of machinery that felt almost organic. And then he entered the chamber. The room was wide, lit by an eerie blue glow. Strange instruments floated in the air, turning slowly, each of them humming with quiet energy. The soldiers stepped aside as their commander moved forward. She dismissed them with a single gesture, and they obeyed instantly, vanishing through the walls like shadows. Now, it was only Elias and her. She lowered herself onto a reinforced chair at the center of the room. Her armor groaned as it shifted, parts of it sliding open to reveal faintly glowing skin beneath. She leaned forward, her eyes fixed on him, sharp as blades. Elias swallowed hard, clutching his small medical bag as if it could shield him. You want me to treat you?" His voice trembled despite his effort to sound calm. Her reply came like thunder rolling through stone. "I want you to fix me." She said the word with bitter force, as if she hated it. "I have commanded machines. I have commanded healers. I have commanded the finest my empire has to offer. All failed. My strength falters. My body betrays me." She paused, her gaze narrowing. "But your kind fights differently. You resist. You adapt. That is why I chose you." Elias blinked. His mind struggled to keep up. This warlord, this feared conqueror of worlds, was asking him for help? His hands shook, but his training whispered to him through the panic. "Listen, observe, focus." He took a cautious step forward. What's wrong with you?" For a moment, silence. Her face hardened, as if the question was an insult. But then something shifted. The glow in her eyes dimmed slightly, and her shoulders sank, only a fraction, yet enough to reveal the truth behind the steel. "My breath burns," she admitted softly, though her voice was still edged with command. "My blood is fire beneath my skin. Each battle drains me more. My twin hearts falter, and every healer says the same. There is no cure. There is only death." Elias felt a chill crawl up his spine. He had expected arrogance, threats, violence. But what he saw now was something different. Beneath the armor, beneath the cold command, there was pain. Real pain. He moved closer, his fear mixing with something else. Compassion. He noticed the way her hands trembled when she thought he wasn't looking. He noticed the stiffness in her posture, the shallow breaths. The commander of the Zathari Dominion was dying, and she was terrified no one would know until it was too late. "You came to me," Elias whispered, more to himself than to her. Her silver eyes locked onto his. "Yes. Because I cannot be seen like this. Not by my soldiers. Not by my enemies. If they know their commander is broken, the Dominion shatters. Millions of lives will be swallowed by war. I will not allow it." Elias felt his chest tighten. He realized with a mix of fear and awe that this was bigger than him. If he failed, it wasn't only her life at risk. Entire worlds might burn in the chaos that followed. He set his bag down, his hands steadier now. "Then let me try," he said softly. "I can't promise anything, but I'll do what I can." For the first time, her eyes softened, not with warmth, but with a kind of weary relief. She leaned back in the chair, exposing her chest where the armor had parted, the faint glow beneath her skin pulsing with each uneven beat of her twin hearts. "Do it," she commanded, though the strength in her voice was frayed at the edges. Elias reached for his tools, his mind racing, his heart pounding. He was only a doctor from Earth, a man with no weapons, no armies, no power. Yet here he was, standing before the most feared warrior of the stars. And she was trusting him, because she had no one else. Elias adjusted the alien scanner with clumsy hands. The device hummed, glowing with a faint green light, casting strange shadows across the commander's face. He had never seen technology like this before. It felt alive, pulsing as though it understood what it was doing far better than he did. Still, he tried. That was all he could do. The readouts were complex, filled with shifting symbols he couldn't read, but the machine also gave him basic shapes and colors. He watched her chest rise and fall, her breath uneven, too shallow for a being who was supposed to command whole fleets. The glow beneath her skin flickered with her pulse, sometimes strong, sometimes weak. Elias swallowed hard. Her body was nothing, like a human's. Her veins seemed to carry a liquid metal that shimmered with each heartbeat. Her nerves glowed faintly under stress, almost like threads of light woven through her flesh. Her twin hearts beat together, but not in perfect rhythm, and he could hear the uneven thrum in the silence of the chamber. He should have been overwhelmed. Any normal doctor would have run. But something caught his attention, something strangely familiar. The cells, magnified by the scanner, were breaking down. Their structure collapsed like walls falling under fire. The healthy ones tried to repair, but the disease spread too quickly, eating its way through her from within. It reminded him of cancer on Earth, though fiercer, more merciless. Elias leaned, closer, studying the patterns, trying to think. His mind spun with possibilities. Could he slow it? Could he stop it? Then her voice cut through his thoughts. "If you fail, human," her silver eyes opened, pinning him in place like a blade. "I will end you." The words froze him where he stood. Her tone was not anger. It was not cruelty. It was something worse, cold necessity. She meant it. She had to mean it. For her, weakness was death, and witnesses to weakness could not be allowed to live. Elias felt his throat tighten. He wanted to argue, to shout that he was trying to help, but no sound came. His fear pressed down on him like a weight. She watched him, her expression unreadable. Then she added, quieter, almost to herself. "Not from hate, not from rage, but because no one can know. My empire cannot see its commander broken." Elias's hands trembled. The instruments clinked against each other as he forced himself to move, to keep working. He tried to focus on the disease, on the numbers, on the patterns in her failing cells. But his heart hammered in his chest, louder than the hum of the machines. He was trapped. If he failed, he would die. If he refused, others might die too. Entire worlds collapsing into chaos. Yet, as he looked at her again, he noticed something that cut through his fear. Her eyes, glowing with alien fire, carried something deeper now. Beneath the sharpness, beneath the command, there was a flicker of something almost human, fear. Not of him, not of pain, but of being forgotten, of losing everything she had built. She was afraid, just as he was. The realization gave him strength. Elias set his jaw, his voice low but steady. "Then I can't fail." The commander tilted her, head slightly, studying him. For a heartbeat, her lips curved in what might have been the ghost of a smile. Not kind, not warm, but almost approving. He returned to his work, forcing his hands to stop shaking. He analyzed the strange blood sample, trying to compare it with human diseases in his memory. His thoughts raced through treatments, mixtures, anything that might slow the spread. He knew this was far beyond him, yet he couldn't stop. He wouldn't stop. For long minutes, the room was filled with nothing but the hum of alien technology and the sound of two beings breathing. One human, one alien, both carrying the weight of survival. At last, Elias whispered half to her, half to himself, "There has to be a way." The commander closed her eyes, her voice softer now, though still sharp. "Find it, human, or your world will burn with me." Elias froze, staring at her. The words weren't a threat. They were a truth. If she died, her empire would fracture, and war would follow. Humanity would be caught in its path. The room felt colder. The air felt heavier. And yet, as Elias looked at her fragile strength, her trembling hands, and the faint flicker of light fading in her veins, something stirred inside him, not just fear, responsibility. This was no longer just about saving her life. It was about saving countless others who would suffer if she fell. He took a deep breath, steadied his hands, and leaned closer to the scanner. "Then I'll fight for you," he whispered. "For them. For everyone." And though the commander said nothing, her eyes opened again, shining with something Elias had never thought he would see in her: hope. The hours passed slowly inside the alien chamber. The walls pulsed with a low hum, as if the ship itself was alive, breathing in rhythm with its master. Elias barely noticed. His focus stayed on the screens, on the blood samples, on the alien, heartbeats that echoed unevenly in the quiet room. He worked with every bit of knowledge he had, adjusting tools he barely understood, improvising with instincts that had carried him through years of medicine on Earth. But no matter how hard he tried, the disease inside her spread like wildfire. The strange cells burned themselves out and dragged healthy ones down with them, leaving nothing but broken fragments behind. His own body ached with exhaustion. His hands were sore, his eyes dry, but he forced himself to continue. Failure wasn't an option, not for him and not for her. When he finally looked up from the scanner, he froze. Commander Vare was watching him, but not with her usual cold fire. Her face, so often sharp and unreadable, was softened. A single line of wetness glistened on her cheek. A tear. For a moment, Elias thought he was imagining it. The warlord of the Zathari Dominion, the terror of the stars, was crying. But no, it was real. She quickly turned her face away, trying to hide it, but it was too late. He had seen. Elias felt his chest tighten. He had expected her to threaten him, to glare, to demand progress. Instead, she was trembling, just a little, but enough for him to see that beneath the armor, beneath the command, she was still a living being in pain. Her voice came low, broken, nothing like the thunder that had shaken the city below. "I cannot let them see me weak." Elias didn't move. He let her speak. "If my soldiers knew, if my enemies discovered, the Dominion would tear itself apart. I forged it with fire, with war, with fear. If I fall, they will all fight to claim the throne. Millions will die. Whole worlds will burn." Her shoulders sank as she whispered the last words, her hands gripping the chair as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. For the first time, Elias saw her not as a commander, not as a warlord, but as a woman carrying the unbearable weight of an empire. And he understood. This wasn't just about her. Her sickness was a spark that could ignite a galactic war. She wasn't afraid of death alone. She was afraid of the chaos that would follow. Elias stepped closer, his fear dimming under a wave of compassion. "You're not just fighting for yourself," he said softly. "You're fighting for them. All of them." Her silver eyes lifted to his, and for a heartbeat, he saw something raw inside them. Vulnerability, a silent plea. She gave a bitter laugh, though her voice shook. "Do you think me noble, human? No. I am selfish. I do not want to be remembered as a broken commander. I do not want to vanish into weakness." Elias shook his head. "Maybe. But you came to me. You didn't let yourself give up. That doesn't sound selfish to me. That sounds like someone who still wants to fight." Silence filled the chamber. The ship hummed. Her twin hearts beat unevenly, echoing faintly against the walls. Then, slowly, she leaned back, her tears gone, but the crack in her armor still visible. She closed her eyes, speaking in a whisper almost too quiet for him to hear. "I have killed more than you can imagine. I have burned cities. I have broken empires. Yet here, with you, I feel smaller than I ever have." Elias didn't know what to say. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a ruler. He was just a doctor. But he knew the truth in her words. Power meant nothing in the face of death. He placed a gentle hand on the scanner, his voice steady now. "Then, let me carry some of that weight. You don't have to fight this alone." Her eyes opened again, and for a long moment, she studied him in silence. Then, slowly, she nodded. It wasn't a nod of command, but of trust. Fragile, uncertain, but real. Elias returned to his work, his mind sharper now, his fear replaced by determination. She had shown him her weakness, her pain, her fear, and, in that moment, something shifted between them. She was no longer just the alien commander who threatened him. She was a patient. She was someone who needed him. And for the first time since this began, Elias believed he might actually save her. The hours passed slowly inside the alien chamber. The walls pulsed with a low hum, as if the ship itself was alive, breathing in rhythm with its master. Elias barely noticed. His focus stayed on the screens, on the blood samples, on the alien, heartbeats that echoed unevenly in the quiet room. He worked with every bit of knowledge he had, adjusting tools he barely understood, improvising with instincts that had carried him through years of medicine on Earth. But no matter how hard he tried, the disease inside her spread like wildfire. The strange cells burned themselves out and dragged healthy ones down with them, leaving nothing but broken fragments behind. His own body ached with exhaustion. His hands were sore, his eyes dry. But he forced himself to continue. Failure wasn't an option, not for him, and not for her. When he finally looked up from the scanner, he froze. Commander Vare was watching him, but not with her usual cold fire. Her face, so often sharp and unreadable, was softened. A single line of wetness glistened on her cheek. A tear. For a moment, Elias thought he was imagining it. The warlord of the Zathari Dominion, the terror of the stars, was crying? But no, it was real. She quickly turned her face away, trying to hide it, but it was too late. He had seen. Elias felt his chest tighten. He had expected her to threaten him, to glare, to demand progress. Instead, she was trembling, just a little, but enough for him to see that beneath the armor, beneath the command, she was still a living, being in pain. Her voice came low, broken, nothing like the thunder that had shaken the city below. "I cannot let them see me weak." Elias didn't move. He let her speak. "If my soldiers knew, if my enemies discovered, the Dominion would tear itself apart. I forged it with fire, with war, with fear. If I fall, they will all fight to claim the throne. Millions will die. Whole worlds will burn. Her shoulders sank as she whispered the last words, her hands gripping the chair as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. For the first time, Elias saw her not as a commander, not as a warlord, but as a woman carrying the unbearable weight of an empire. And he understood. This wasn't just about her. Her sickness was a spark that could ignite a galactic war. She wasn't afraid of death alone. She was afraid of the chaos that would follow. Elias stepped closer, his fear dimming under a wave of compassion. "You're not just fighting for yourself," he said softly. "You're fighting for them. All of them." Her silver eyes lifted to his, and for a heartbeat, he saw something raw inside them. Vulnerability, a silent plea. She gave a bitter laugh, though her voice shook. "Do you think me noble, human? No. I am selfish. I do not want to be remembered as a broken commander. I do not want to vanish into weakness." Elias shook his head. "Maybe. But you came to me. You didn't let yourself give up. That doesn't sound selfish to me. That sounds like someone who still wants to fight." Silence filled the chamber. The ship hummed. Her twin hearts beat unevenly, echoing faintly against the walls. Then, slowly, she leaned back, her tears gone, but the crack in her armor still visible. She closed her eyes, speaking in a whisper almost too quiet for him to hear. "I have killed. More than you can imagine. I have burned cities, I have broken empires. Yet here with you, I feel smaller than I ever have." Elias didn't know what to say. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a ruler. He was just a doctor. But he knew the truth in her words. Power meant nothing in the face of death. He placed a gentle hand on the scanner, his voice steady now. "Then, let me carry some of that weight. You don't have to fight this alone." Her eyes opened again, and for a long moment she studied him in silence. Then, slowly, she nodded. It wasn't a nod of command, but of trust. Fragile, uncertain, but real. Elias returned to his work, his mind sharper now, his fear replaced by determination. She had shown him her weakness, her pain, her fear, and, in that moment, something shifted between them. She was no longer just the alien commander who threatened him. She was a patient. She was someone who needed him. And for the first time since this began, Elias believed he might actually save her. The chamber was silent except for the sound of machines humming and the faint, uneven rhythm of her twin hearts. Elias sat beside her, his body tense, his mind racing. He had given the treatment. Now all he could do was wait. The commander's breathing was heavy, ragged, each inhale pulling like fire through her chest. Sweat rolled down her face, glistening in the blue light of the chamber. Her armor lay open, her body exposed in a way Elias knew no enemy had ever seen her before. She looked smaller like this, stripped of the image of power, and yet she still looked unbreakable. Elias wanted to believe she would survive. But every time the monitors flashed red, his chest tightened with dread. Every time her body convulsed, he feared it was the end. Hours dragged on. Sometimes she lay still, her eyes closed as if unconscious. At other times, she fought the treatment with a strength that shook the room. Her body arched, her hands gripping the chair until the metal groaned. Her twin hearts pounded like drums, their rhythm wild, desperate. Elias stayed close through it. All. He wiped the sweat from her brow with trembling hands. He whispered words of comfort, even though he doubted she understood them. "You're strong. Stronger than this. Just hold on." At one point, her eyes snapped open, blazing with silver fire. Her hand shot out and clamped around his wrist. The strength of her grip nearly crushed him, pain shooting up his arm. "If I die," she gasped, her voice raw and broken. "Remember this, human. You stood unafraid. That is worth more than armies." Elias's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say, so he simply held her hand, even as it shook with fury and pain. "You're not going to die," he whispered back. "Not while I'm here." Her grip loosened, but she didn't let go. For a while, they stayed like that. Warrior and doctor, predator and prey, bound together not by power, but by survival. Time passed in fragments. The machines screamed with alarms, and Elias rushed to adjust the flow of energy through the treatment. He watched the glowing lines of her veins flare too bright, then dim dangerously low. Every choice he made felt like a gamble. But he refused to stop. Between the chaos, there were quiet moments, too. Moments where she simply breathed, her chest rising and falling slowly, as though she were caught between life and death. Elias sat beside her in those moments, watching, waiting, praying in silence. He thought about Earth, about the people in his clinic, about the children who came to him with scraped knees and frightened eyes. He thought about them and realized something that made his heart pound harder. This wasn't only about her. If she died, her empire would shatter and war would spill across the stars. And humanity, small and fragile, would be caught in the storm. Her life was a shield against chaos, and that shield was now in his hands. He leaned closer, whispering, even though he wasn't sure she could hear. "You're not alone in this. Not anymore." For the first time since the treatment began, the monitors shifted. The red warnings faded into orange. Her twin hearts, though still uneven, began to steady. Her breathing smoothed into a calmer rhythm. The glow in her veins flickered, but no longer burned with the same violent light. Elias felt his chest loosen, a wave of relief, washing through him. He dared to hope. The commander's eyes opened slowly. She looked at him, her silver gaze softer than he had ever seen. She didn't speak at first, only studied him with quiet intensity. Then, her voice came, low and rough, but steady. "You stayed?" Elias gave a tired smile. "Of course I stayed." A long silence followed. Then, for the first time, she released his hand. It was not dismissal. It was trust. The machines continued their steady hum, the danger not yet gone, but for the first time survival felt possible. Elias leaned back in his chair, exhaustion pulling at his body, but his heart filled with something stronger than fear, hope. And as the mighty commander of the Zathari Dominion drifted into uneasy sleep, her life tethered to the hands of a fragile human, Elias knew one truth with certainty. He was no longer just her doctor. He was her lifeline. The hours stretched into a blur of half-light and exhaustion. Elias had not slept. He sat by her side, his eyes heavy, his body aching, but his mind alert. Every sound from the machines pulled his attention. Every flicker of her breathing stirred his heart. At last, the storm began to fade. Her hearts beat stronger. Her breathing steadied into a calm rhythm. The glow in her veins softened, no longer wild, but controlled. Elias leaned forward, hardly daring to believe what his eyes were, telling him. The commander lived. Slowly, her eyes opened. The silver light within them was dimmer than before, but steadier, clearer. She looked at him with a strange softness that no warrior's mask could hide. For the first time, Elias saw not the fearsome ruler of a galactic empire, but a living being who had fought against death and won. "You did not leave me," she whispered, her voice rough but strong. Elias gave a weary smile. "I promised, didn't I?" For a long moment she was silent. Then she pushed herself up, her body trembling but refusing to bend. Even weakened, her presence filled the room like fire. Yet now there was something different. Not the cold command of power, but a quiet respect. "You risked everything," she said slowly, You touched what no one has dared to touch. You saw me broken, and did not turn away. Elias lowered his gaze, unsure how to answer. I only did what anyone should have done. No, she said firmly, her silver eyes burning with conviction. Not anyone, only a human. Her words hung in the air, sharp and heavy. Elias looked up, confused. In my world, she continued, weakness is hidden, pain is shame. Trust is rare. But you gave me what none of my people could. You gave me hope. Elias felt his throat tighten. He had never thought of himself as special. He was just a doctor, a man who had chosen to heal rather than harm. And yet, to her, it meant something far greater. She rose from the chair, unsteady at first, then stronger with each step. Her armor closed around her with a hiss, silver plates shifting to cover her once more. She stood tall, her shadow stretching across the chamber. The commander of the Zathari Dominion had returned, but this time, there was something new in her stance, something human. She turned to Elias, her voice carrying the weight of command, but also of gratitude. From this day, human, you are bound to me. Not as a servant, not as a subject, but as a healer and as an equal. Your kind will never be forgotten. Elias blinked, stunned. Equal? Her lips curved just slightly into something that might have been a smile. You saved the life of an empire, Elias. And more than that, you changed it. No warlord, no enemy, no council will touch your people while I live. Humanity will have my protection. The weight of her words crashed over him. Protection. From an empire that spanned the stars. Humanity, small and fragile, had just been given a shield forged not in politics, but in trust. Elias felt tears sting his eyes, though he tried to hide them. He had not done this for reward. He had done it because it was right, and yet the result was more than he could have imagined. The commander stepped closer, her presence towering over him, yet her voice softened as she spoke. You once asked me why I chose you. Do you see now? Elias shook his head slowly. I only see a patient who lived. No, she said, her gaze fierce but warm. You see a life. That is what makes you human, and that is what makes you powerful. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was not heavy now, but full of meaning, of promise, of something unspoken, yet unbreakable. Finally, Elias let out a slow breath. So, what happens now? The commander turned toward the door, her armor glowing faintly with renewed strength. She looked back at him once, her eyes like silver fire. Now, human, she said, her voice steady and commanding once more. We rebuild. Together. And with that, she left the chamber, not as a dying warrior, but as a living force. And beside her walked a human, fragile in body, but unshakable in spirit. The galaxy would remember this day, the day a human doctor saved an alien empire. Day weakness became strength. The day trust was born across the stars. The day humanity proved its place among them all.